your name, just so I will say it properly?
Edith Haag, just like the scotch you drank.
Edith Haag.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Pardon me. Good. Today is February 1st, 1992, and it's approximately 12:12, and we're speaking with Edith Haag. And we thank you so much for coming today. To start off the interview, could you briefly tell me when and where you were born and something about your education and training?
Well, I was born in Mitchell County, Georgia, November the 20th, 1923. My parents were English and farmers and fairly well-to-do in my father's side. I went to school at Pelham High School, which is in Mitchell County, and I graduated from there, and I went on to Albany, Georgia, to Freeman's Business College, which I quit in the first year. Did you want to know where I worked? All at dry cleaning companies, candy companies, Bob's Candy Company particularly. And then I saw a notice in the paper where they wanted employees at the Navy Ordnance Plant in Macon, Georgia. So I went up to Macon, Georgia and worked there until I was old enough to enlist in the Army. The day of my birthday, I marched down to the office to enlist in the first I come to, and it happened to be the Army, and I enlisted. Unfortunately, I was working for the government, and I couldn't get a release to go to work with the Army. So I had to have the Army step in around May the 1st and get me a release under this 90-day release program that they had. If companies had to.
What year was that?
1944.
1944.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So you finally got...
You wouldn't, wait a minute. Did you want to know the year I graduated or any of those?
No.
That wasn't, no.
I was just curious as to what year you were trying to get into the Army.
It was March 20th, 1944.
Thank you.
I guess I messed things up. And I was formally sworn into the Army on May the 10th, 1944, and sent up to Fort Oglethorpe for basic training. I was told that I could become a radio worker, or work with a radio communications program in the Army when I enlisted. But when it came time for me to come out of a basic training, they sent me to staging. I found out when I was sent in for my interview, they had no intentions of sending me to communication school, that they actually were going to send me to a place called Los Alamos, New Mexico. And I told them I didn't want to come. And they said, well, I had to come. I had no choice in the matter. But they wouldn't send me out here. I stayed there 4 weeks doing nothing and having no money to spend because I didn't have any. So in 4 weeks they did put me in with 7 other girls who came in, and we left. It must have been on July the, let me think a minute here. It must have been July 25th. And headed out on a train into St. Louis. It's in St. Louis, Missouri. They left us there undecided what they were going to do with us at that time. But later that day they decided they was going to put us on night in a troop train coming in to Laming. We fiddled around. I know you don't want to know that though. So we fiddled around all over St. Louis that day and went out to the zoo and to the, just entertained ourselves as best we could, and got on the troop train when it come in. And I, of all people, being the youngest one in the group, was put in charge of these women who were old enough to be my mother, most of them. And had a couple of girls that went courting back in the troop car. It was kind of funny. I had a friend that I developed who went and brought them back, and we got them into Lamy anyway. But when I got into Lamy, the girls weren't going to get off the train. Our orders read Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I had girls with me from big cities. I was from a small town. And the conductor could not get them off the car. I couldn't get them off, of course. And the only way we ever got them off, we had a whack, and I do not remember her name, bring a bunch of VIP downs in a taxi. And she come in and talked to them and told them she would drive us up here. And that's the way I got them off of the train. We got into Santa Fe, and all I could see at the foot of the hill was a little bitty adobe village. You couldn't hardly tell it was a village, in fact. And this white took us over to Mrs. McKibben's office, and she gave us our instructions to come up here, which disappointed most of us because we thought we were going to be in recruiting. We were very disappointed.
So that when you had been in St. Louis and previously, no one had told you what you were going to do here?
No. They just told us we were coming to Santa Fe, New Mexico.
What did they tell you about your coming to Santa Fe, New Mexico?
The only thing they told me is when she asked me how I would like to come to Santa Fe, New Mexico, I said, "Where is it?" And she told me, and I said, "No, I don't want to go." I said, "I know they have openings for MPs down in Homestead, Florida. I'd like to go there because I knew I'd be close to Mama." And she looked at me and she said, shook her head a minute, and she said, "Let me go talk to the other officer over here," and come back and said, "We just don't think you look tough enough to be an MP." Well, they had made up their mind. They were going to send me out here. I come to find out later that my eye test had indicated my IQ was so-and-so, and that's what they wanted. I passed all the tests with what they required. Plus my education was pretty good for back in 1944. They never once told me I was coming to any place called Los Alamos, and I didn't know that until Mrs. McKibben gave us orders to come on up to Los Alamos. We were never told we were coming to Los Alamos.
What were you allowed to tell your parents?
Nothing. As far as they knew the whole time I was in the Army, I was in Santa Fe.
And when you finally got up the hill and were in, how did they assign you to barracks? And how did
We already had our assignments. We were assigned to barracks, I believe it was 247, the double wing barracks in front of the PX. We knew where we were assigned, and Elsie Pierce gave us our bedding and our clothing and sent us down to the barracks, and it was at lunchtime. So we went over to the lunch, what did they call them? Commissary. No. What did they?
Cafeterias,
No.
mess halls.
What did they? Mess hall. We went over to the mess hall and had lunch. Mm-hmm.
And what work did they assign you to here?
Well, that afternoon we went up and got our passes, and we were assigned to our assignments, and I was assigned to Eddie Wortman's division in supply and property in the University of California out at the warehouse. And I stayed there for 6 months. But I knew I was misassigned immediately because I had no business in that kind of work. I was young, impetuous, and I had a habit of insulting scientists. So eventually one of them went to the man in charge, Mr. Mitchell, D.P. Mitchell, and they come in that night and told me I had my release. I had asked for a release within a month after I was assigned, and they wouldn't give it to me.
And where did they assign you after you got your release?
Well, I had hoped they would send me overseas, but that night they called me to the orderly room and told me I was going down and work for 2 weeks for Major White in the supply department of the engineering division. His secretary's mother had passed away, and I was going to take her place. And I said, I